Welcome back to episode 156 of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, I-Man.
What's going on, man?
And on the sticks, we got TJ.
Hello.
And of course, most importantly, we're talking to the co-founder of Bittensor, Jacob Steeves. Thank you for joining us, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. So
this is big. This is big. So we've interviewed a lot of different notable characters in this Web3 space, but something interesting about you is, and your team, probably your founding team, you guys aren't like natively blockchain people, Web3 people. You guys are actually hardcore AI devs that have understood the utility and the impactfulness of blockchain technology and have decided to incorporate that into the AI layer, right? So I guess the nature of what we want to discuss is, first of all, why, and like what problems does that address and solve, and get an overall like contextualization of what it is Bittensor and Tau is going to do for humanity at scale, right? So I guess what's a good first question, Willis?
Well,
I think you had one in mind.
Yeah. So first of all, Sam Altman is being in front of Senate right now. So just by coincidence.
True. We did not plan that at all.
Watching that right now because they're all here, right?
Yeah, exactly. And but the main question as far as AI goes from everybody is AI could pose a threat to humanity, right? So and we postulated before we even discovered Bittensor, we postulated that a decentralized version of artificial intelligence would be a solution. Yeah. And I want to get your take. Is it true that potentially a decentralized version of artificial intelligence could prevent the collapse of humanity? Is that valid?
I think that is valid. I think it's a philosophical take. It's certainly like one that's slightly libertarian in nature. On the other side would be that we need to control it from a top-down manner, ivory tower. We have the best perspective on how it should be governed, and let's regulate it. I think that's certainly what you're going to see coming down the pipes from people that think that way. And I think there's certainly a value in that type of control of AI, but I don't think it's the big problem. I think that the bigger problem is that we're building this incredibly powerful tool that is going to be gatekept and controlled and owned by a really small minority of people that use it to like exponentiate their power and become incredibly powerful and then dangerous to the rest of humanity. Like I actually think that like humanity is more of a problem for humanity than AI,
the technology
or
itself.
Like humanity plus AI in the in the hands of a small number of people. I think that's really worrying. So building a decentralized artificial intelligence, which really means just decentralized in terms of power, is I think is necessary for us to build a healthy symbiosis with this really powerful technology. So that's where I come from in philosophically. The access is a huge thing. Obviously, building open ownership systems is the best way that people can access not only the technology, but the control of the technology, and guide it by taking a slice. Access is huge. Scale is another thing, right? Getting across the internet and soaking up as much computational power as we can. That's more of like a technical reason for Bittensor, but the ethics and the technical side of Bittensor are very well interwoven.
So let's go just a little deeper on this question. So you're basically agreeing with our analysis on whether decentralized artificial intelligence could help prevent the collapse of humanity, but there's another side to kind of a complete open ownership of this decentralized technology. And the other side could be is there a way that this technology, completely open, can be leveraged by bad actors where, if you've seen the show Silicon Valley, right, we have sort of like a runaway AI where it cannot be shut down. Yeah. So what's the bad side of this potential network?
Yeah, so the runaway AI thing is quite interesting, right? Because I think it's pretty sci-fi. The idea that the AI will decide to sort of like take the nukes, right? That would require us giving the nukes in the first place, which means that there's this like unholy alliance between some people in humanity and the computers that are now going to be in control of the nukes. And I think that's, it's a really powerful tool. So at the end of the day, it's who controls it that matters, and what power they give it. If that is a small group of people, and I think like more prescient right now is with political issues, right, around censorship of ideas. Like, this is an extension of our brain, and it's going to be used to manipulate people. It's going to be used to narrow the perspectives that we have, at the behest of the political opinions that small group has. And so expanding the diversity of intelligence and access to that is really important for humanity to expand its own mind and not be cloistered away into a specific political opinion. Okay, but the runaway AI, coming back to the runaway AI thing, I think that it's going to run away in a sense, no matter what we do. It's really about who it runs away with, and we use open ownership and digital currencies to allow people to like tether themselves to the technology, as many people as possible, so that if we are collectively in symbiosis with this technology, then it's not going to fight against us, because we are its bottom line, right? Right now, with companies like OpenAI and Google or whatever, whatever AI they make, its bottom line is the corporate shareholders of those institutions.
Right.
It's not me and you. And I think, AI by its nature is like an adaptive technology. So it adapts to a loss function, say. It adapts at the end of the day to the reward signal that it's trying to minimize. Tethering that to tau was our goal, so that we could distribute that tether back into humanity, and so that when it does run away, which it will, it's going to run away, it's pulling us with it, and not just some people.
That's fascinating.
I don't think that the AIs are going to like launch the nukes anytime soon. I think that's sort of sci-fi. I actually think it's a bit of a red herring for the real problems arising around centralized ownership and control.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. Here's why. Because Elon Musk, he's been talking about this runaway AI for at least a decade, and his take is, what if we just merge with the AI with Neuralink? Yeah. And so what I'm hearing from you, Jake, is a very similar approach. So instead of merging with the AI, which requires a new technological development and all that, it's like, well, why don't we just issue these tau tokens where we're incentivized to protect all the tau holders, like not necessarily like in a Terminator type of way.
I mean, like from the AI's perspective.
Yeah, from the AI's perspective is to what you're saying, Jake, is pull us along in whatever direction it decides.
But is that because the human components of like supporting this network is the AI is going to, I guess, innately understand and value that, as in like, we don't want to get rid of this human effort, or couldn't AI replace whatever it is humans are doing as far as contributing whatever network value is needed in order to produce these like high quality intelligence models? Like, are humans always going to be necessary in this mechanism?
If the AI uses tau as its currency, as its metric of value,
yes,
and we create a game theoretic equilibrium where that's where people are, and where that's where machines are going to market, and that's controlled by humans, then it will, like, where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, we still maintain the control. I don't think that like connecting our minds into the AI is necessarily going to solve that problem, because it could actually just metastasize it and make it so that, well, now the AI has, a super highway into our brains to manipulate us and make things, much worse. Like, I don't think that necessarily in any way solves the problem about what the motives would be for the AI. And like, I think that incentives are everything, right? Okay, what are we incentivized to do? is going to really, really drive us at the end of the day. So working with AI at that like fundamental layer, all of the neural links and things will come about, and they will arise on top of whatever structure we build, right? I like to think about, like, say, democracies, right? Democracies are really slow. Democracies are really inefficient. Maybe a lot of people shouldn't be voting. But the fact that we do have a vote means that this really complex, unwieldy machine that is our nation states does, even if it's really, really corrupt, at the end of the day, it's going to have to come back to us and try to get our vote. So if we didn't have that tethering to humanity in our corporations and our institutions, our democratic institutions, we would be really shit out of luck. They wouldn't work for us because they wouldn't really care at the end of the day. They'd be, oh, we'll say that we're working for you. Like, okay, no, trust us. We're really, it's is in your favor. But the thing is that at the end of the day, we can always be like, well, I'm not going to vote on that particular thing, and I hold the keys of the technology, which is the nation.
So does that mean that when you're designing this ecosystem and this system of decentralized AI, you can program it in a way where it cannot make decisions without the will of the Tau holders? Is that what you're saying?
No, it can make decisions without the will of the Tau holders, but those decisions are at the end of the day judged by people that hold Tau. So if we can see that it's going AWOL, then we can change that because we hold the keys.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
There is no possibility of I guess the definition of what runaway AI, I guess, is not as like definitive. I think everyone probably has like a different answer to what a runaway AI event would actually look like. In my mind, it would probably be some sort of like self-improvement algorithm that maybe even humans don't even understand how to interpret. And if I were to assume what AI would do with the first, action, it would be to blockade any kind of a human intervention in this new process to kind of like proliferate much more new algorithms and things we don't understand. Right. So,
but let's be honest. Let's be honest. What's actually going to happen is that's going to be a human trying to build a monopoly for its AI with the help of governments to build a centralized power structure, something like this weird mix of corporate capitalism mixed with AI, where the gatekeepers to it have like extraordinary power that is running away. They've taken, it's like that movie Elysium, where there's like the one, there's like the humans in space they're like living on this like
space station,
halo ring thing, and it's like they've got all the power and they just kind of enslave humanity. That I think that's much more likely than oh my god, like iRobot. That's great for a film, but it's not practical, and this is actually what's already happening. Right, it's like already happening, and it might be not even the fault of the people that are involved. Like, humans are, at the end of the day, they're going to also be incentivized by their bottom lines, and if their bottom line is like, hey, I want to make a lot of money, and the best way to do that is to work with governments to build a monopolistic control of this technology that involves only myself and stops people and is gatekeeping and stops other people from entering. They're going to do that, right? So it's our job to build systems that are sort of resistant to that behavior, right? That's what Bitcoin did so well. It's like it's resistant to the worst nature, the worst natures of humanity. Sam Altman is currently talking to Congress, and I'm sure that he is incentivized to say that AI is dangerous and likely going to run away, because then he can get them to give him regulations which would stop other competitors from coming into the market and competing with OpenAI. I don't want to, like, that's a bit slightly insinuating. I mean, I think that he probably isn't doing that, but it's possible, right? And that would be where his incentives would lie. In the case of Elon Musk, I think that he tends to use public opinion on topics like, say, like climate change, which he took advantage of in order to get funding from the government and also to spin a message for his own company. And like, he's certainly going to do that with his AI company that he's creating right now. He's going to say, okay, Runaway AI, so therefore this is my solution, because it's a great narrative pitch.
That's an interesting take. Yeah, because when you're thinking about artificial intelligence, is there any weight to the idea that we could have an AI where it's actually not controllable? Like, is it even like reasonable to think that this is possible? Or I want to get your expert opinion on that, just straight up.
Yeah, I mean, we have all sorts of systems in society, or in like inside of the global organism, which are not under our control. I think that like the capitalist system itself is sort of not under anyone's control. It's the democratic system is, we like to think that the executive branch controls the country, but in a way, there's like so many people involved that all have a say in the way that these things run, like in a capitalist economy. It is not under anyone's control. It's not really being controlled in the way that we think about when we talk about control. Instead, it's being aligned. And we're trying to make sure that it's properly aligned with people. And that's where these really great ideas came from, like, capitalist markets and democracies. Hey, let's make sure that somehow like root the control, like the pseudo control of this system, into like, say, landowners, which is how it was previously done, right? Or in the democratic vote. It's the same kind of principle of like what it means to be controlled. I think there's a lot of systems, like Bitcoin is uncontrolled, right? Totally uncontrolled. But and also at the same time, it's controlled in the perfect manner, because it's run by people that own Bitcoin, and anybody can participate in mining Bitcoin or owning Bitcoin or participating in a conversation. It's not behind closed doors. It's sort of like a public resource. And so it is controlled, even though in some sense no one can turn it off. No one can turn off the economy. No one can turn off, humanity endeavors to create nation states, and like, these things are not really under control. So, and I think that always comes back to, okay, well, let's build mechanisms of incentive that are aligned, rather than totally controlled. And so, yes, is in a sense like Bittensor is uncontrolled, right? And we aspire to that. We aspire it to a system where it's like not just one or two people that have all of this outsized control in the system, and that it's actually distributed across many people, as many as we can get, so that it's aligned with all of the people that have entered the system, for good or ill, with respect to something like the price, because like we distribute a lot of tokens to a lot of different people, and we had advice like, don't do that. Hey, you should just hold most of them for yourself, so that you can control the price. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but that's totally antithetical to the mission as it's itself, which is to make sure that the ownership is distributed as much as possible. It would be like, why would I do that? Like, I'm just going to create another corporate AI company.
Right. So this is a good segue to get into Bittensor specifically. So what's the elevator pitch? Right, you're in an elevator with Elon. He's never heard of Bittensor,
but he talks about it a lot without knowing.
He does talk about it. Yeah. So what would you say to Elon? It's like, hey, what are you working on, Jake? What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, the ethics side doesn't really come up, because people are like, how are you going to make money, right? And I like, really, in the paper we talked about this. Is said like, intelligence is a commodity of sense, like it has value. The outputs of machine learning models is like refined information, in the same way that like the outputs of your mind are actually valuable if you're intelligent and people want to talk to you.
Yes.
So we want to get access to it. We want to procure the largest amount into a collective system so that we can combine it. And the best way to do that is with incentives. Markets are the most efficient way of extracting resources that humanity has ever come up with, which is really crazy. It's not like top-down bureaucratic control over mining companies. It's actually competition between them that makes the system really efficient. And the example for that is Bitcoin, which has become the largest supercomputer in the world by many magnitudes, based on that premise, perhaps, or like that structure of technology. And so, we want to combine the largest amount of intelligence producing machines together into a collective system so that we can drive AI development and leverage it. And the best way to do that was to use incentives. That's why we use the token in the first place, is to drive that. And that's what we see. Like what happened over the last year in Bittensor is quite phenomenal. How far we've come, like how big it got, and how like almost like impossible it was for our own selves to allocate the compute that people had thrown at the system. We were able to like extract like mining farms that there was no way in hell that we would ever be able to get GPUs at that price. And people had brought that into the system, and they were able to bring that to the system because we had this open market, a non-open, anonymous, censorship-resistant, permissionless, liquid market that allowed people to allocate resources and bring them into the system. Basically, we aligned people really well. Markets align things really well, and we run the foundation, which is like a company within the system. And one thing that I've learned about being a manager is that applies to humans as well.
Yes,
it's like well-aligned people are like 1,000 times faster than 1,000 people. And so we, this incentive mechanism structure for producing machine intelligence at scale is the most efficient way of extracting this, what I like to call a digital commodity, in large quantities. And that's really the elevator pitch. There you go.
Okay.
See you later, Elon.
See ya, Elon. Talk to you later.
Sorry, go on.
Talk to you later. Yeah.
Talk to you later, Elon.
Yeah. So okay. Now going into the technical. So we're gonna nerd out here a little bit. So there are three, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are three participants in the ecosystem, potentially four. So we have the miner, we have the validator, and we have the staker. Is that correct? There's three?
Yeah, that okay. Yeah, I can talk about all those.
Okay. So explain to me the miner situation. So what exactly, I understand Bitcoin, how it works, hashing together the blocks, a lot of computational power is required. So what is happening in the Bittensor network for the mining aspect of this particular network?
They are hosting and inferencing machine learning models. That's what they do in practice. They don't actually need to have a machine learning model at all. They could be connected to an endpoint. They could be sitting behind the screen typing things in. But the output is what we measure from the miners. We give them an input, a query. Hey, like complete this sentence or summarize this text, or rank this response to this question, or generate an image from this textual description, or do the inverse, take the image and get me the textual description. All of those are computationally expensive problems and can also be evaluated for their performance on the particular task that we're asking them to do. So, hey, does this image actually look like the text? And it's very computationally expensive. So that's where the computers enter the system, because in order to do that efficiently, to do that quickly, you need a fair amount of compute to do it. So the miners are practically sitting there hosting a model. Like, let's say they're on our current prompting network, they're running a Vicuña 13 billion parameter model that takes like, let's say at least a 20 gig GPU to run a request per second, right? So that's an expensive thing to allocate. And they need to basically take all of those requests in and do the inferencing and do it quickly. And then they get an output, and that output is and then evaluated by the validators, which was the second part of your question, I'm imagining.
Okay. Yes, correct.
What do the validators do? So the validators sit there in the network, and they basically are ensuring that the miners are performing the operations which they're being tasked to do. And then by ensuring that, or like ranking the performance of these miners over time, they determine like an ordering of them and a ranking, a scoring, and then that in collection. So like the combination of all the scorings from all the validators is passed to the chain, and then that there's a consensus which runs on that. So we ensure that there's agreement between them about who is actually doing the work that we ask them to do, and then we distribute the tokens onto those miners in a higher proportion. So then that creates an incentive gradient for the miners. And so like all of our work is crafting that incentive gradient to make sure that it's properly aligned with producing the thing that we want the network to be producing. And there's a variety of pitfalls that arise, because it's not just there's like a synthesis actually between machine learning and markets. Like a lot of people have actually researched this particular topic, because it's all about machine learning. It's about going downhill in a loss function. So you optimize the weights against the loss function, which is a gradient descent problem, usually, which means going downhill. And in incentive alignment is about people wanting to go uphill to maximize their incentives. And those things are, very well related. So, it actually makes a lot of sense that machine learning engineers would be good at doing market analysis. And so anyway, so I'm diverging too much here, because the validators, they set the weights, they reach consensus, they mint the tokens, the tokens go through the network to the miners. 50% of them goes to the validators currently, and that is what incentivizes them to reach consensus, sort of like a prediction market or like a bonding market.
Okay.
And that's what enforces the honesty, and also the assurance that they are indeed running the code that the other ones are running.
Okay. Let's go through one example, if you don't mind humoring me here. So,
of course,
on a particular node in the network, specifically a miner, do they do a singular task such as converting text to image, or are they general purpose computational nodes?
They do a specific task.
Okay.
Like converting text to image.
Okay.
Yes.
So in this example, we're converting text to image. I want to understand how a validator determines the quality of the output. So let's say give me a cow, right? And so this node computes it, and here's an image of a cow.
Yeah.
How do you rank the quality of images of cows from a validator?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There are a variety of ways to do it. And I'll give you an example of one. So basically, validators could be running what's called a clip model, which means that this clip model is capable of creating what's called a shared embedding. It's a representation, a numerical representation, or a set of numbers that encode the meaning of something effectively. And they can compare the clip embeddings between text inputs and image inputs. So the model has been trained so that when you take an image and then the caption of the image, the embeddings produced by the model for both of those inputs, the text and the image, are very close, according to some metric, like cosine distance, in the space of this representation. So this allows, this is trained beforehand. This is an example of a way of validating this. This is trained beforehand so that similar images are close to the similar text descriptions. So a validator can use this tooling to measure how performant the outputs are. So they could go, hey, okay, here's the text, send to the model, get the image out, take the text and the image and put them through clip and get the embeddings, and then measure the distance. So then this creates an incentive mechanism where if you're a miner, you have to figure out how to create images from the text inputs that would then be, if they pass through clip, would produce embeddings which are close to the text inputs. And that's actually how they train Stable Diffusion, right? That's Stable Diffusion's training pipeline. They take that as the loss function to optimize the image generation tool side of the network. And that's akin to the way the incentive works, right? So the incentive is basically isomorphic, to use a mathematical term, to the loss function that's used to train those types of models.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is if we're going to have a node in the network focus on text to image, and the way to perfectly train this is to already have like a data set of something to compare the output to. Okay. So then,
so yeah, this is a really good question. So the Bittensor is not focused entirely on training. Training is like it's in the pipeline, but it's not, it's like before the incentive, because the incentive is measuring the outputs of the models.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The way in which you produce the very performant outputs is up to you. Maybe that's by figuring out how to get access to a bunch of APIs that do that.
Yeah. Sure.
That's where the market
which is cool. So that actually creates this sort of like, it's like a vacuum.
Yeah.
Like we like vacuuming in the intelligence from everywhere else and pulling it into the single system.
Okay. So in this scenario, then this particular node focused on text to image. That's one node in the ecosystem. The other nodes are working on different modals, right? Large language models, or maybe output videos based on text. So how do you determine the quality of each of the outputs on so many? Like, is each node responsible for that quality? Like they're responsible just improving that quality? Is that the work that they're doing?
Yeah, that's the work that they're doing. I mean, they want to improve the quality, and they also need to be allowing inferences over that quality. Which is really, really an expensive process. Running the queries is not cheap. In fact, over time, inferencing as use has increased more and more in the machine learning industry, the training has become less and less and less of the task at hand, and it's actually like inferencing the models, allowing people to query them, that becomes the really expensive part. Because if you're a company like OpenAI, you have like tens of thousands of queries per second. That's like tens of thousands of GPUs that need to be on consistently all the time. And I heard somewhere, I can't reference this piece of information, but it was like $1 per query for GPT-4. Right? So they're losing money.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that, I predict that over time this will become more and more where these companies are focusing their budgets, right? Because the models are getting so large that it's really expensive to query them. So this is like what we've seen with the market that we created, was that the majority of the work is actually just trying to stay on the network and inferencing the requests. And sometimes the requests get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The expense, explodes. The inferencing of the models is where we can get the intelligence that we're evaluating. So of course, what arises is a market for the ability to do inferences.
Okay, so that tells me that we have a network that is self-improving, right? That's the first step, right? It's self-improving. So how does a developer, like if they're creating some sort of application that is leveraging artificial intelligence, they're like, how does one leverage Bittensor? Is it a bunch of API calls? Like how do you take advantage of this tech?
Yeah, right now there's an API, and that API goes through the validators right now. So you can just use Bittensor out of the box right now, which is really cool. In fact, kind of like secret knowledge is that Bittensor is wide open. Like the outputs are really good from the prompting network right now, and hardly anyone is querying it. And that's going to probably change pretty soon. The Bittensor API is a Python library written by the foundation that allows you to query the network, right? So you can talk to these miners specifically.
Yeah.
You can point your endpoint at them and query them. You can combine their outputs. You can do broadcast queries onto the network. You can learn how to talk to the network. All of that's in the API.
Yeah. Is there some sort of like threshold or metric that you guys consider that will, I guess, like a catalyst event to get developers to not so much focus on centralized AI systems and kind of realize the additional value or the efficiencies of a decentralized AI system? Like, I hear the word parameters throwing around a lot.
Yeah.
Everybody likes to market and show off like the billions of parameters that is that the thing that developers are looking for, or is there something else, some other metric or of signal of quality?
There's a bunch of metrics that are important, right? It's like parameter size, query time, context window length, that people care about for building applications. I mean, there's another dimension, which is censorship resistance. I think that, we have in spades, and also access. We can't stop you. And I think that that's really cool. And also we can give you a diversity of opinion because we have a lot of different types of miners on this network, which allows the diversity of opinion. I think is really important as we were talking at the beginning of the conversation about like censorship and how the controllers of AI are going to do their best to use this technology to inflate their own biases. So the ability to expand and have a diversity of ideas on the network, I think, is really valuable for people, for applications, and also just for people that want to train from the network, right? That they don't just want to have like a single narrow viewpoint that they're always just converging to. So we can provide a lot of diversity and expansion over the network. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. But let's speak a little bit more on the diversity element. I guess if you can extrapolate down a little further down the line in comparison to a non-diverse, like system architecture for AI, machine learning, what does that look like as far as like a mature AI as a final product output? Like if it has much more of a diversity of opinion, does that kind of like address the issues of biases that everybody's worried about? If it can contextualize, and not so much like a localized understanding of how the world operates, and it has a much more broader interpretation base. Is that one of the additional, I guess, value adds of a decentralized system as opposed to centralized?
Yeah, I think that the centralized systems will tend to converge to a particular opinion. And I like to think about Google's mission statement, which was to organize the world's information and make it useful and available to all. And I think that might have changed slightly now. Their bottom line was not exactly that, because they eventually they needed to advertise in large amount, and so it became organize the world's information that in a way that their advertisers make money. Right. And the protocol that we're trying to create is trying to organize the world's intelligence and make it accessible, and democratically accessible to everybody. And I think of it also as kind of like if intelligence was a wave or like a signal. We're trying to maximize, the broadband throughput of the network so that people can really get what they can have a larger diversity of opinions. And you can collapse that if you want. You can take the broadband intelligence and collapse it using something like a mixture model, and like take the best result given your preferences, and then you could just have something that's more of like a narrowband intelligence. But I think that there's going to be a lot of value here for giving people diversity of perspectives and diversity of intelligence, and driving the system to really expand people's consciousnesses around, say, just like the narrow band that is a single OpenAI endpoint.
So going back to the nodes, I'm curious that each node, is it because of the computational requirements that each node can only focus on a single modal, or is it?
Well, that's not true. Actually, they can. A single node can work on other modals.
Okay.
it's just architecturally we treat each endpoint as distinct, but behind the scenes they might be running a model that is multimodal.
Oh, okay, interesting. So that means that if I was a developer and I see a particular node out there focused on multiple modals where I need to query for my application a lot of the aspects that that node is outputting, then I just use that node. Is that correct?
Yeah. So what do you mean by multimodal here? So like, what is this specific task that you're asking about?
So let's say that I'm creating a chat application that allows me to not only interpret my text, but also to convert my text into image, to video, and what else? Yeah, that's about it. That's all I can do.
Meme generator.
Meme generator, yeah. So I guess what I'm asking as a developer, do I query just the single node that is providing me what I think is going to be the best output, or am I using several nodes in the network?
I think you would be using several sub networks in the network to do that particular problem. I think that's like the low hanging fruit way of solving this problem is that if you want to understand the image, then you would take the image and send it to the image to text network,
Gotcha.
and then
Okay.
inject that into your text and be like, this is what the image has in it.
Okay.
Here's a diversity of things that it has in it because there's some diversity of perspectives, and then now tell me more about the image. Like that's how GPT-4 is doing that. That's how Chat Tensor does that. Like it's not an actual multimodal model, which is a different thing, right? So that's like a single model that has been trained to take in text and image, right,
Okay.
and then produce outputs given both inputs. Okay. So it's like it has two encoders in it, which is something that can be done. And we could actually create a network on Bittensor that specifically works with multimodal. And you could even have the miners querying the other specific modal networks in order to run miners on that. And sure. I think that's something that we will work on down the road, sort of this combination of modalities. And that's, like what Meta's working on right now is really cool. They're doing joint embedding architectures where they'll train a single model which can translate between all of the different types of modalities. So you can be like, here's an audio of a dog chasing a fire truck, and then they can convert from the embedding. So like the encoding of that audio comes into a shared embedding space. They can then convert that into an actual video, video or image or the text.
Yes.
And all those things are like interacting and coming together.
Dude, that's so cool.
That's really cool. That's actually like something that we're going to be working on in the next year, hopefully at OpenTensor.
Yeah. Dude, that's really awesome. I can see so many applications. Like I can see the police using this as like, here's some audio like of this attack and like give me, show me what it might look like, during this event. And like you get some ideas of like potential outcomes and, how things occurred during that event. So I can see that being very, very useful. I'm curious about the validators because as I was doing research, it seems like the validators are creating their own products. And stakers are like, hey, I like that product. I want to support that project. And they staked with that validator. Is that the ecosystem that was intended? I mean, how does the validators in terms of projects like manifest?
Yeah, so by being validators, they have to have a lot of TAL in the network. And so that basically gives them access to the system. Okay. The most obvious thing to do is to just build a product where it's like a traditional AI company that gives you access for an API key. And I think people are doing that right now, which is pretty cool. So if you pay me dollars, I'll give you like I'll proxy your requests to the network. Or if you delegate your stake to me, we'll do the same thing. The delegate of stake is also a form of revenue, and so that could be used as the mechanism for payment. But we're actually agnostic to the way that the validators build a business. And that is the primary business idea for the validators, is that their intention is to gate access to the network, and give people a much cleaner, less violent, less scary experience with the Web3 ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Is that the only way to create a product using Bittensor, is building it on top of a validator, or is that just one way to do it?
If you want to use the network, you do need to be a validator right now.
Okay.
So you need to basically get access to one, or bridge through one, or be one. But that's actually likely to change. Also, we do want to build rails that would allow people to just maybe spend Tau to access the network, which would mean that you don't even need access to a validator. This kind of like convergence, or like slight centralization towards 128 projects, which I think is a fair number, was done so that we can stimulate some organization away from just the foundation, which was primarily doing the development on top of Bittensor. And it's like sort of like the initial expansion away from more centralized system that we had with a single institution that was primarily building, hiring developers.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So that means that the expectation is there's going to be more than 128 validators at some point.
There's going to be likely only 128 validators for the time being. I don't see any reason to expand that number yet.
Okay.
But there will be other ways of accessing the system without sort of being gated by these validators. Now, already there's people that are like, okay, I'm going to be the validator that is just like totally permissive.
Okay.
Right. So there's competition already at the level of the validator to break up any types of monopolies that could be forming at that level of the project.
Last I understood, you needed 1024 Tau in order to be a validator. Has that number changed?
The number is adaptive now.
Okay.
Instead of fixing the amount of Tau that you need and then letting the number of validators change, we fix the number of validators and let the amount of Tau. Sorry, instead of fixing the Tau and letting the number of validators change, we fix the number of validators and let the amount of Tau change.
Okay.
So I think it's somewhat increased. I think it's like 3,000 Tau.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And that change and rate of change is entirely dependent on
the market,
the value of Tau, right?
Well, it's based on the value of the network, right? Because if you don't see any value for accessing the system, then that would decrease that. And then yes, obviously there's staking rewards from the validator side. So some people are using that as a way of accruing more Tau. So it's like sort of like an investment in the project.
Do validators
never intended to be that way?
Do validators have any kind of like increased weight as far as like their judgment of quality? If depending on the stakers, like if they have a higher staking allocation from the community, do now like their active validation become a little more impactful?
Well, absolutely right. So if they get a stake towards them, then their perspective in the network is
more valuable,
magnified. So they are worth more to the consensus.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
So that means
which the more bandwidth. So like then they can query the network faster.
Yeah.
Which is really like the reason why validators will want to hold on to their Tau is because it's what makes the miners work for them.
So if I collected 5,000 Tau, I'm essentially kicking someone else out of the validator network. Is that correct?
That's right. Someone at the bottom.
Yeah, someone at the bottom.
That's competition, dude.
Yeah.
Just like you said.
Yeah.
Market forces work. Yeah.
Yeah, because it seems like as time goes on, the value of the network will increase just because there's the right incentives to continuously improve the outputs of these machine learning models.
Yeah.
And also the value of the community. And I don't think that should be understated.
That's a good point.
The people that hold the Tau that have been trained in the ecosystem expands so that there's now hundreds and then thousands of people that are part of this ecosystem that are and it's amazing when you have an open source open ownership program company like we do. Just the people come out of the woodwork. Right. I would never hire them, frankly. A lot of them. No way.
Yeah.
But they turn out to be the people I should have hired, and it's like because they've done the work and they've put the hours in to become miners and they really care. now because they're properly aligned and they do, incredible work. More than we could ever possibly do from the foundation, because we didn't do a pre-mine. We didn't raise like a stupid amount of money.
Yeah.
We really, believe in our community and hopefully can stimulate them to grow, right? Like, and that's the thing. It's like the borderless, permissionless aspect of in the community is also like one of our killer advantages.
Your moats.
Yeah, totally. Like that other, more concrete bureaucratic systems can't really compete with. But it really comes down to how you align incentives. If the incentives are disaligned, then yeah, you're shit out of luck. Better to go back to the bureaucratic solution.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I really believe that the decentralized nature of what you're building is going to win out. And I'm curious about this scenario playing out, from the perspective of Google and OpenAI. Could you see them being participants of the network?
They already are, in a sense. People are already bridging their technologies into it. And I would love it if they were. I think that they could. I don't think that they necessarily will. I think it's too icky, right? Web3. Ew. You know what I mean? I think that it's true. Like a lot of people in maybe sort of like traditional technology are, scorn us, right? But yeah, no, I think it's very possible. It's very possible for them to compete and participate, and I've actually asked Sam Altman to do that on a phone call, and it didn't come through. But like maybe in the future when we have a little bit more visibility.
Okay, so here's why I asked Jake. The computational network, right? We're comparing Bitcoin. We got Bittensor. We got Google, OpenAI. There's no network bigger than Bitcoin, right? So that's pretty clear. But AI requires significant computational power, right? And so Google, no matter how much money they have, they won't be able to compete with Bitcoin's power or OpenAI or anything like that, right? So isn't it reasonable to assume that in order to have a better product than the output of Bittensor, wouldn't Google and AI just like plug into the network and just like kind of become that better product just because they're, Google, they reach billions of people and they're leveraging the Bittensor network to create that, or to output that better AI. Isn't that like a reasonable, logical outcome from this?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're open, we're permissionless. Like, that's our thing.
Well,
like,
let me give
you
and
use the network. Like, mine in it, as long as it stays, like, if they align with the goals of the market here, and it's open, right? So it really, they can align and they can monetize their work, and that's fantastic. And they can contribute the work they're doing, and we all get better. In a sense, like the only thing bigger than Google and OpenAI is like everyone combined, right?
That's right.
So
that's right.
That I don't see that as a problem. I see that as a killer app. Like I see that as a fantastic outcome.
I totally agree. And I just want to make sure I understand this. That's why I'm kind of harping on this. So is it AI the race of computational power? Yes or no?
Sorry, is it a race of computational power? Is the race for OpenAI a race for computational power?
Yeah, is the race for just usable AI, like a quality AI, a race of computational power?
I think it's a race of a couple things. It's not just computational power, right? It's a race for compute, hands down. Like NVIDIA chips are flying off the shelves, and there's no doubt that that's a requirement. It's a race for data. I think like data is a requirement for training machine learning models. I think it's a scientific race for innovation, right? And it's also a race for access to machine intelligence itself, which is recursively useful. And that's actually the final point, is the one that we're focused on, because I think that all of those things wrap into that one, which is that intelligence is itself recursively valuable to itself, and you can use the outputs of other models as inputs to the further student models of those outputs, which is called distillation. And that all requires inferencing. Even the collecting of data, as an example, the inputs that are used to train ChatGPT come from inferencing humans. Is this a good output? Is this a good output? That's basically inferencing machine learning models, but they're human machine learning models.
Right.
So like the data part, and then the combination of those is with compute is where you get access to the thing that people want, which is that, the outputs of these models. Okay. So is it a computational arms race? Absolutely, is a computational arms race. But it's not only a computational arms race.
Yeah, because I think the incentive mechanism set up for Bittensor allows for the collection of that computational power. But you're right. Ultimately, it's not just computational power. It's like the data sets, the models, the different algorithms that's required to actually make this all work. And so I think Bittensor ultimately has like the ace up the sleeve with this incentive mechanism. That's why I think in the long term, there's no choice but to have Google and OpenAI just like join the network, because that's how you're going to get a better product. So yeah,
absolutely.
So, okay, so we got 10 minutes left, Jake. So we're going to have some questions from the community, and we curated, so we collected about 31 questions, and we found only 10 that we thought were, pretty good to ask. So here's one from @whoy3k. They're asking, when will you feel it's ready to turn the Bittensor network over to the DAO?
We're going to do that incrementally. Like peeling an onion, sort of. The first moves on that are already underway, like on test network, where we're decentralizing the pseudo key across a number of individuals, which is still quite centralized, right? But it's to a degree above, say, just a single or 2 or 3 individuals that all have the key. The decentralization around the delegates and the validators is what we really want to plug into. So we're going to turn the delegates into true representatives of the network that are basically being voted for liquid manner. And that could likely happen in the next 6 months, which will stop us from doing certain operations, basically like a sort of executive meets a house, where the executive proposes legislation, but then can be gated by the House. And then the final piece possibly is that not the final piece, but the next piece that could happen over the following 6 months is via democracy system, so that everyone who has Tau can actually vote on the executive, the people that have control of proposing legislation. And then finally, we will likely delete the executive altogether. But these things are really, really, really hard to give firm timelines for, primarily because we're dealing with an equilibrium system. And so it's like, when will the system reach an equilibrium where we're confident that we can, pull the plug or inject a new thing? And often it's like there's no clear answer. It's not really we'll just work a little bit harder. We have to do a lot of analysis. So, but that's the overarching. That's what I would like to work on, is in terms of the schedule, in the next couple of years. And I think it's going to be forced upon us quicker, and we're very aware of this fact, is that like the pressure is going to come from on high. Like the regulations are coming down fast. Just as we're talking right now, Sam Altman is talking to Congress, and that's going to result, no doubt, in legislation. And we need to, as a collective of people, reduce our surface area, and that's another reason for decentralization. So, we may be forced out the door sooner than we'd like, and it doesn't matter about the equilibrium, So Anyways, that's the best I can do with that question.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. There's no way you can just like turn on a switch and all of a sudden it's a DAO. It's more complex.
Yeah.
All right, next question from 0x Melodic, and the same question by Isles Rue is this is also one of my questions. There's a little bit of confusion on I guess the blockchain network that Bittensor is using. So does Bittensor intend to move away from the parachain model in its independent blockchain, or will it take a dependent on the dot parachain Polkadot ecosystem?
We have moved away from using the Polkadot parachain ecosystem, so we are an independent chain right now.
Okay.
We've been like this forever, and there's a chance that we will move into the Polkadot ecosystem, but we wanted to reach a level of maturity where there wasn't as much development going on in the core protocol before we did this. So it was a premature launch onto Polkadot that when we decided to go with Finny, and we decided to step back from that, which was definitely the right decision, in my opinion. But it is very possible that we do integrate into Polkadot. Polkadot is also like an alive and developing system. It's quite amazing. It's improving every day, just like Bittensor. So we consider ourselves sort of like on a parallel track with them, and we'll likely move back to Polkadot at some point.
Okay.
Maybe not this year, maybe not the year after. But Bittensor is on a long trajectory, right? We our minting schedule is 256 years.
Yeah.
We're only in the first 2 years. It's very likely that we're going to be around for a very long time, and certainly I will. And so we want to be careful about this progression. We're not in like a super rush to get into Polkadot, and I think honestly it was a bit premature.
That's interesting. All right, another question by Pete1816. So it's a long question. To paraphrase, how do you leverage using Bittensor in a private way? So let's say I'm developing a new company and I'm using AI to help me develop that company. But I want to make sure that my IP is protected. How do I extract knowledge from this network without exposing what I'm working on?
So if you're trying to protect your data set, you can't send it into the network. If you're trying to protect your IP, you can use Tor browser. If you want to build a private model offline, then you need to distill from the network. So you need to fine tune a model.
Specifically as a user, I'm asking as a user. It's like I'm leveraging Bittensor as a way for me to develop a new product. How does the output from Bittensor remain private only to me?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Okay.
It doesn't. So because you're using the network and the miners on this network are other people.
Okay.
There's no current homomorphically encrypted network. Something that we could do where inputs are homomorphically encrypted, and then you're required to run a model which acts on homomorphic encrypted data. That's possible. It's not our highest priority right now. But we would basically be developing, we'd be developing another subnetwork where we can run on that effectively a different modality of information. Or we could extend the models and ask people to have a homomorphic encrypted aspect to them. But right now, like we're sticking with the openness quality of the network. So it's open to access, and the data that goes in there is also open. It's like we're bullish on openness.
Yeah. Okay. That totally makes sense. Because I know that it's technically possible to have encrypted data coming in and encrypted data coming out. It's good to know that it's at least a possible kind of avenue for like a subnetwork to provide that as a value add for a particular user. All right, another question from Fatty Foods. How does Bittensor protect the future development of AI from the grips of large corporate power? What checks and balances ensure it can't just get gobbled up by big money?
Well, that really comes down to TAO holders. I mean, at any moment, like all TAO holders could just sell all of their TAO to Google, right? I don't think they'll do that. But if they did, right, then the system would come under control of Google, and that would be the end of that token. But I think that would also destroy the value proposition of the whole technology. Like it's just a centralized internal system for Google, which is, it's not permissionless.
No one's
it's
incentivized
a really monopolized market.
Yep.
Right. So it's probably not very efficient. And so therefore the technology is just broken. And someone can just fork it. Right. Like this is the great thing about Web3, right? Oh, you don't like it? Just fork it.
Yeah.
Like, please. Yeah. And so we're not resistant to, like, totally resistant. I mean, I think, like, obviously as the network, gets larger and larger, the market cap itself is one resistance, right? It's like, well, then it would just cost a lot more money to do that. The decentralization of the token itself, that you'd have to organize a lot of different people to make that sale would be one thing. Okay, so that would be just like on the token ownership side of that question. On the network side of things, yeah, because they could come in and just dominate the network in terms of compute, right? That was another thing. Okay, that hasn't happened in Bitcoin. Maybe they had a longer period of time before anyone even looked at them. So their competitors didn't, jump in when they could, and there's still a fair amount of decentralization in the mining pools that run on Bitcoin. I think that we're sort of flying under the radar right now. Like a large corporation like Google is not going to do that. But they probably could, right? If they were to throw their giga data centers at us, everyone would be messed, right? But why would they do that? Do you know what I mean? Like they would be destroying the project that they're mining into. So I can't see that likely happening. I think that those are sort of resistances. And then, like, let's say that they did take over the network, right? They'd have to maintain that hegemony and compete with people that are trying to, there are people that are trying to take them out, maybe to do it in a more efficient way. And Google is run in a bureaucratic way. So they have compute, but maybe are they smart enough? I don't think that that's likely. And then I think the final piece is with the DAO. I mean, like the fact that there is a fair amount of centralized control in the token right now, given the fact that the foundation, actively develops the chain, the solution to corporate takeover, or whatever type of takeover you would describe, comes from decentralization, which is what we just talked about.
Okay. Two more questions, Jake. So we got one from Crypto Baller 15. The question is, OpenAI is launching an open source large language model. Is that a threat to Bittensor?
No, not at all. That's great, right? We can consume everything into the network.
Yes.
Right. Yes. And so we will just do that with that model. Great. Now it's in the network. Now it's added to the sum total of system intelligence. And like what OpenAI is doing is fantastic. I'm really glad they did that. So I don't see it as a threat. I actually see it as a super benefit. I think it's fantastic that they're doing that.
What would you say is a threat to Bittensor?
Ourselves. The people that are here in this ecosystem, right? If we it's in a sense, it's like a baby, right? It's slightly fragile. And like even Bitcoin was the same, right? For the first couple of years it was fragile. Like the people that were running it could have probably destroyed it. And that's not totally impossible, right? People get upset, people get angry, and they try to destroy things out of resentment. And like, it's very possible that we could really mess up. Like we could make really bad decisions as a collective of people. We could not be prepared for hacks. We could clutch our pearls and refuse to give up power. And with decentralization, I think that would be a risk. Like, and it's certainly, something that we could do. And we won't, but like, there's risks that we can make. And then I think like perhaps there's just a technology out there that supersedes us. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. maybe we don't get any attention. Maybe nobody cares. Maybe people don't even care about decentralized AI.
Yeah.
They're like, no, screw it. I want this.
Famous last words.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I think that those are reasonable risks and like potentials, and we think about them all the time. But what do? You plow on, right?
Yep.
You believe in your vision.
Yeah.
And you work hard, and like the people in the community, I think that we have some of the most amazing people. Because we did a no pre-mine, like we have people that have done proof of work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like they've committed their time to this project, and like they mean it, and they believe in it, and it's fantastic to work with them. So I have every bit of faith in who I am connected at the hip with in this community.
Yeah, the engagement we've seen from the Bittensor community, it's far and beyond anything we've seen from any other community, because we cover a lot of different ecosystems, and they are actively reaching out to us consistently.
Yes.
Like they're very passionate.
It's awesome.
It's great to see. And that's, if you're looking for any good indication of.
Yeah. If there was ever a moat, it's that.
Yeah. Your community. Yeah. For sure.
Okay. Final question, Jake. All right. So this is one that I'm kind of curious about. So I'm just going to read it. So especially as it relates to a new sub network, how does Bittensor enable a positive feedback loop of recursive training? For example, how can the endpoints of other models be used to create an even better model?
That's a really good question. So here's an example of something that we're already working with that's just really, really cool. We can inference the models for training data, and this is the distillation aspect that we've been working on for a really long time. People are doing this right now. Like if you look at, like, say, Vicuña, great model, was trained with not that much time off of the Llama base model using outputs from GPT, ChatGPT. And so the inferencing of these models can be used to collect into data sets which are pretty small but incredibly informationally rich and dense, and that's like a compiling asset. It's like a mountain of data that we're building, and the miners can use this output to fine tune themselves in the network, and that's kind of this recursion. This is really cool, right? Where it's like I'm talking to you, and you're talking to me, and then we can use that conversation to improve ourselves in the network. And we do this, like, so we also have a mining team, and this is what the mining team does, is like they fine tune themselves on the outputs of the network, and then they plug themselves back in. And so that's like, we measure that in real time. Like, okay, let's see what the diversity is, and let's see if the actual miners are performing across the board on average, right? So that I think is really the holy grail for us, is building this self-referential, self-reinforcing behemoth that is flying through space and building AI.
Is that very similar to what I guess one of the later innovations was AutoGPT, where it's kind of like querying itself?
No, totally. It's similar to that. Like, so, one of the ways that we query into the network to collect data set is we go, okay, hey, we want to collect the data set on all the knowledge in this particular subdomain, build me a strategy, and then we can go to the network and get the outputs. So, okay, we'll explain this concept and explain that concept. And then we can build a data set, which is then itself, you can use that to fine tune a model. It's very cool. Like, in a sense, we're mining the network itself as inputs to the network.
Yeah. And the mountain ahead of you is just a huge data set of data, right? That's what you're parsing your information from. So yeah, that's very interesting. Jake, I'd like to have you come back on later to follow up on some of this stuff. Is there anything that is going to be released soon that you're kind of looking forward to? Is there any updates that the community should be aware of?
I think the big ones that people should be excited about are the pseudokey decentralization in the next quarter. Voting on proposals in the next quarter. The exciting one for the machine learning side is like different modalities of inputs, huge updates in the code base, improvements in the API to make it really easy for people to use things. those are like right here, right now. There's some updates to the website. They're coming out in the next week.
Nice.
We're constantly improving the look and feel of our branding. But I think the core technology itself is just really, really being hypercharged right now with the fact that we're opening up these different types of networks, and it's really exciting to see that in action, to like how we can expand into multimodality and make the outputs of this system expressible. People believe what they can see, people believe what they can read, and in the last year, we you could almost call it like a test network. We were working with a much more abstract, incomprehensible output, which is like embeddings and logic predictions. But now we're really moving into the space of frankly, very usable AI, and I'm really excited to see the applications and the companies that are built on top of validators. That's coming along really quickly. Yeah, I'm really, really excited for the next little while, and I hope that the people stick around and see what's coming.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake. I'm going to put all the links in the description for everyone who's listening. Make sure you follow these guys. This is very important technology.
Yeah.
Jake, I want to thank you again for coming. This has been very eye-opening.
Enlightening.
Yeah.
All of the above.
Yeah. So I really appreciate it, man. Let's have you come back, I guess, sometime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. What a great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Jake. All right. We'll talk soon, man.